Other writings and conclusion to chapter 2. We're back to finish up chapter 2. So let's get started. I'm going to read about the Midrash again, even though I already did last week before I got sick. I want to review that. So another large body of material called Midrash seeks to explain the Old Testament scriptures. This material consists of commentaries, homilies, explanatory notes, exegetical comments, and exhortations. It is all to be dated later than the New Testament, indeed, after the compilation of the Mishnah in the early 3rd century AD. And some of it comes from the early Middle Ages. However, it is possible to trace some of the ideas and material back into the New Testament times. If used cautiously, this material can be of genuine benefit to students of the New Testament. And moving forward here, the Tosefta, meaning supplement, is still another large collection of material that arose more or less at the same time as the Mishnah, the Tosefta. It is arranged in orders and tractates that parallel the Mishnah and almost all the areas covered. This material was not deemed as authoritative as the Mishnah at that time, so it was excluded from it. But for the modern student, the ideas found there are very helpful in understanding the Judaism of the 1st and 2nd centuries AD. Finally, we mentioned 2 well-known Jewish writers. Philo. How do you say his name? Philo or Philo? I Googled it, but it's been a while. We're going to go with Philo. Okay, so Philo, circa 20 BC to AD 50, and Josephus, circa 37 to 100. Philo was an Alexandrian, an Egyptian philosopher and theologian whose goal was to reconcile Greek and Hebrew thought. He wrote extensively, and most of his writings still exist today. He developed the allegorical method of interpreting the Old Testament. This method allowed him to find underlying Greek ideas in the Hebrew scriptures. Later, Christian thinkers such as Clement of Alexandria and Origen made extensive use of Philo's allegorical method, but it is not clear whether any New Testament books were influenced by his thought. Some see traces of it in the Logos, word, idea, in John 1 through 14, and the book of Hebrews, but this is by no means universally acknowledged. That aside, Philo gave us some rare insight into Jewish mystical thought during the time of Jesus and Paul. Moving on to Josephus. Josephus was a Jewish general. Wow. Say that 10 times fast. Josephus was a Jewish general who lived through the difficult days leading up to the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. He survived by surrendering to the Romans early in the rebellion. In return for the last page of chapter 2. Is it the last page? Am I lying? Oh, I'm lying. I had too excited there. In return for his cooperation with Roman invaders, He was later given an apartment in Rome where he wrote several famous works. His History of the Jewish War, published in AD 77 to 78, is our primary source of information about those awful days, as well as the events that led up to them. Josephus mentions James, John the Baptist, and even Jesus, saying he was a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as receive the truth with pleasure. And you can read that quotation in his book, Antiquities 18.13.3, I guess. Conclusion. So what do all these complex ideas, this vast literature, and this complex history add up to? 3 things stand out. First and foremost is how God's overarching plan is being accomplished in the world. History is not just the meaningless interplay of purely this worldly forces, human greed and violence, natural events like earthquakes, economic factors, political upheavals. Rather, woven through it all is a higher purpose, often discernible, at least in retrospect, to those who know God. They are able to see God at work, accomplishing his own purposes. Paul saw all of this history. Paul saw all of history this way. If you read Acts 17, and the book of Revelation shows in dramatic fashion how the real spiritual world stands behind the events of this less real material world where history is taking place. Second, and equally important, is the observation that human beings are not left out of the picture. Human choices are being made, and the consequences for good or ill are always being felt. We could almost wish that God did step in more directly sometimes, but most often, he does not. He allows us our choices. We are responsible for them and their consequences. And sometimes the courage of a single person or family, such as the Maccabees, can change the whole course of history. Third, the Christians of the New Testament era saw all of past history as pointing to the coming of Christ as its fulfillment. The prophecies of the Old Testament, or the Torah and Tanakh, as we learned, also Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, how they're really called. The prophecies of the Old Testament, the unifying of the world under Rome, a universal language that related peoples together, that would be Greek at the time, a time of relative calm that allowed travel and exchange of ideas, if you've heard of the Roman roads. The restless spiritual hunger of people for something more. All of this together converged at the coming of Christ and his offer of the gospel. The coming of Christ brought the end of all the earlier ages and the beginning of a new era of salvation. The time of preparation was now over, and the time of fulfillment had come. We're done with chapter 2. Oh my goodness. We're done with chapter 2. Yeah, emotional. It took so long to get here. Okay, so to end, I'm going to read through the vocabulary words that we learned today so that anybody who's been doing this with me can feel proud of yourself. I do not promise to say these words or people or places correctly. I don't promise that. That's not part of this deal. But let's go through the vocabulary so that you can feel proud of yourself. This is what we learned in our adventure today since we've begun through chapter 2 till now. Key terms: apocalyptic, apocrypha, diadochi, diaspora, Essenes, ethnarch, Feast of Dedication, Gentiles, Hasidim, Hasmoneans, Mezuzah, Midrash, Mishnah, Monotheistic Pharisees, Polytheistic Syncretism, Preparatorio Evangelium, Pseudepigrapha, Sadducees, Samaritans, Sanhedrin, Second Temple Judaism, Septuagint, Talmud, Targums, Tefillin, Tractates, Vulgate, Zealots. That's a lot, and I'm not done yet. Key people / places. Let's go on. Alexander Jannaeus, Alexander the Great, Antigonus II, Antiochus Syrian, Antiochus III the Great, Antiochus IV Epiphanes, Antipater, Archelaus, Aristobulus II, Bar Kokhba, Bethzur, Bethlehem, Bethsaida, Caesar Augustus, Caesarea Philippi, Caligula, Claudius, Cyrus, Dead Sea, Decapolis, Edom, Emmaus, Galilee, Gamaliel the First, Gamaliel I, Gamaliel, Roman numeral 1, I guess, Jessius Florus, Ginny, Herod Agrippa the First, Herod Agrippa the Second, Herod Antipas, Herod Philip, Herod the Great, Herodias, Hillel, Hyrcanus II, Idumea, Jamnia, Jericho, Jerusalem, John Hyrcanus I, Jonathan. Who's Jonathan? I don't remember Jonathan. Jordan River, Josephus, Judas Maccabeus, Judas the Galilean, Judea, Julius Caesar, Macarus, Mariamne, Masada, Mattathias, Mediterranean Sea, Modane, Mount Gerizim. I remember that one. Nero, Perea, Philo, don't know how to say his name. Phoenicia, Plain of Esdraelon, Plain of Gennesaret, Pompeii, Pontius Pilate, Ptolemy, Qumran, Rabbi Judah, Rome, Samaria, Sea of Galilee, Seleucus Nicator, Shammai, Simon, Syria, Tiberius Caesar, Titus, Vespasian. That was a lot. All right, so just so that you can feel accomplished, we learned all that. That's good. Did I miss any cool stuff? Tradition. Focus number 2, tradition. Sure. Let's see if this is interesting. Ooh, it references Fiddler on the Roof. It's interesting. If you have seen the movie Fiddler on the Roof and the play, you should have some insight into the meaning of tradition in the Jewish religion, as it was emphasized by Tevier. Since the earliest times, Judaism has been primarily a way of life. This doesn't mean that theological ideas aren't important, but deviations there can be tolerated more than they can be tolerated in lifestyle. Yes, I remember learning about that. The lifestyle of tradition can dictate matters of eating and washing, as well as the celebration of numerous festivals. There are many laws and traditions in Judaism. Some examples from the Mishnah are laws pertaining to agriculture, various benedictions for the consumption of fruits, common prayers after meals, which corner of the field should be left for the poor, illicit mixture of seeds, how the first fruits are to be brought to Jerusalem, festival days, Sabbath, Passover, Day of Atonement, Feast of Booths, New Year's Feast, Purim, Feast of Weeks, and laws pertaining to women. That list consists of marriage contracts, sisters-in-law, how to cancel a wife's vows, certificates of divorce, and how to acquire a wife. So, end story about tradition. Any other stories? Yes, I could read the summary. Okay, this is really long. It's a little long here, but I'll just read the 12 points in the summary, and then I'm going to cut this off. So, to summarize chapter 2, number 1. The personal tone of the New Testament is seen in the fact that its 27 books are made up of 24 personal letters and 3 personalized accounts of the life and work of Christ. Number 2, Palestine consists of 5 longitudinal regions: the coastal plain, the foothills, a central mountain range, the wilderness, and the Jordan Valley. No, that's 1. The wilderness and the Jordan Valley, and the eastern mountain range. Number 3, Palestine had several administrative districts in Jesus' day: Galilee, Samaria, Judea, Philip's territory, the Decapolis, and Perea. Number 4, Herod's descendants who ruled Palestine from 4 BC to AD 66 were Archelaus, Philip, Antipas, Herod Agrippa I, and Herod Agrippa II. Number 5, Jerusalem was destroyed systematically by the Romans from AD 66 to AD 70. Number 6, Jesus was seen as a threat by the Jews because he made controversial claims about himself and took liberties with Jewish customs. That goes back to what we just learned about tradition. Number 7, the most significant unifying factors for the Jews were their relationship to God and their sense of uniqueness to world history. Number 8, other factors that unified the Jews were: A, the idea that God had placed them in Palestine forever; B, the messianic fervor of the time; C, the synagogue; D, the Torah and tradition, which included Sabbath keeping, and circumcision; E, the temple; F, the priesthood; G, the festivals. Number 9, the best known religious group in Jesus' day was the Pharisees, who had 2 major schools of thought: the followers of Hillel and the followers of Shammai. Number 10, other groups of this period included the Sadducees, the Essenes, the Zealots, the Samaritans, the Herodians, and the Amharites. Number 11, the Apocrypha includes 14 non-canonical books written between 200 BC and AD 100. That's the Apocrypha. Number 12, and last, and I'm cutting it off now. Number 12, rabbinic materials were developed over a period of 600 years and were put in the form of the Talmud, of which the Mishnah is the core. The end. And with that, chapter 2 is concluded. Now, I'm really busy these days. My car broke down. I've been sick. I have a sick child now. And I just started a new job. So kind of just a lot going on in my life. So I don't know if I'm going to keep reading every day or every 2 days or every 3 days. So you'll see me around. Whenever I get back on here, we will read chapter 3 and get started on it anyways. The Gospel and the 4 Gospels is what it is titled. Chapter 3, the Gospel and the 4 Gospels. So goodbye for now. I'll try to get back on here on the weekend. I think that'll be the plan after I get through my first week of work. Goodbye, everybody.